If I was writing a cookbook, this recipe would definitely be in it. Part 10 Butternut Squash Scarpaccia. I don't know how to say that, I'm sorry. Evidently, that word in Italian means old shoe, and it's a recipe that is a great way to eat lots of veggies and use up pretty much any veggies you have in your fridge. And this one is a butternut squash version. We've been growing a lot of butternut squash here, and they've been sitting in our kitchen now for a while, and I needed to find a way to use up a bunch of squash. This recipe came from Louise Claire's kitchen, and I found her account on Instagram, and I tried it out, and I loved it. And she has measurements there, and I kind of half followed them. So mostly this would be like a technique kind of video more than a really firm recipe type of video. I'm filming the second time that I made this recipe. The first time I made it was 6 hours before this time. I loved it so much I made it twice in one day. Not only did I make it twice in one day, I made it again 2 days later. And then I ran into a problem. I figured that since it was so easy the first two times, that the third time I could kind of just disregard the recipe altogether and just start putting those ingredients in completely different ratios. Don't do that. It is not wise to do that. I imagine that some people out there would say, of course, that's not wise to do that. That sounds like a horrible idea. But there are some of us out there that are like recipe cowboys who just kind of do what we want. We shoot from the hip. And in a lot of the other ingredients, you could do that, but not with the chickpea flour. Really, that was the main problem, was when I added too much chickpea flour because I wanted it to be a little bit more firm. It was firm. It was too firm. So just don't do it. I learned some other things when I tried making this recipe a bunch of times. Put it on the bottom rack when you're cooking it. That way it gets a little bit crispier on the bottom. Try to make it as level as possible. That way it cooks evenly. So now I have made this recipe 6 times in 2 weeks. So I've learned some things about what works and what doesn't. You're going to start with a large bowl, and you are going to take your 2-ish pounds of butternut squash and you are going to make them very thin. In this case, I used a peeler, but I have also used a mandolin for it. I tried it with a medium setting on the mandolin and the very thin setting, and I would just suggest staying with the very thin setting. Then you are going to very thinly slice 2 red onions, or you could use white onions. I used those as well, and they came out good, but I just prefer the red onions. So 2 thinly sliced red onions, 1 cup of chickpea flour, 1/3 a cup of polenta, 3 tablespoons of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of sage, 1 teaspoon of salt. You're going to put all those things in a bowl, mix them together, and let them sit for about 20 minutes. The reason you're letting them sit is because the salt is going to draw out the water from the squash and the onions. After that, you're going to use about 1/3 a cup of water, adding a tablespoon at a time, mixing it together until you don't see any more dry spots. You want to use as little water as possible to just get it to the point where there's no dry spots and you have something like a very thick paste made up from the chickpea flour and the polenta. And you're going to see that mixture and you're going to wonder, how is this possibly going to hold together? And you are right to think about that. What you're going to do is you're going to get out a baking sheet. I've used a 9x13 sheet, like a smaller one, a larger one. It's up to you. I used a rimmed one. That would probably be best, but you could use a flat baking sheet as well if you needed to. Lay down your parchment paper, scrape out the entire bowl evenly on the surface of the parchment paper, spreading it as even as possible all the way to the ends, and then you're going to take something to try to press it down. I used a potato masher in this version. I've used a cup. Use whatever you have. You just want to help it make contact as best as possible. Then you're going to place this into a preheated 400-degree oven for about 40 minutes. The cooking time is going to depend on how thick your scarpaccia is. I've seen some versions where their Scarpaccia really holds together, kind of like a flatbread. This one is a little less so, and that's okay because you would need to put in flour or something to make it bind together more. You could add a tablespoon of that. That would probably help it if that was really important to you. But one of the things that I love about this recipe, first of all, it's delicious. I made it twice in one day. Need I say any more? But it's also vegan and gluten free. So if you add the flour, obviously it's not going to be gluten free. Thanksgiving in the United States is next week for us. So this would be a perfect addition for Thanksgiving meal. Or just if you're trying to eat more veggies, this is a great way to eat more veggies. You do have the protein from the chickpea flour. So between that and all the veggies, it's a pretty healthy meal. Okay, I'm going to end this the way I do with all the recipe videos with my 6 questions that I think are super important for every recipe. The first one is, how does it taste? I think I've made it real clear. I like the way this tastes. It's very delicious. Then I asked myself, can I make it in bulk? Like kind of. You would need to have very large bowls to mix it all. Like that filled up a large bowl. So you need to have a humongous bowl or multiple large bowls, and you would need to have multiple trays. So I guess technically you could. So I'll say yeah ish on bulk. Then I asked myself, can I freeze it? And I did try to freeze it and reheat it in the air fryer, and it was perfect. So, yes, you can, and you can do a make ahead for Thanksgiving. Then I asked myself, is it easy? Yeah, it's pretty easy. Everything gets just placed into a bowl and mixed together and spread out on a tray. Then I asked myself, is it quick? And I would say, no, it's not quick because you have to use a mandolin or a peeler and you have to bake it for 40 minutes. So, no, I don't think it's that quick. Lastly is the cost, and it was about $5 for that tray. So that's a pretty good deal. If you try it, I hope you enjoy it as much as I did.